G'day and welcome to Mark and Sam After Work. Today I've got in front of us a couple of things I want to talk about. One, the last week or the week before I had a barrel and an action, which was the bighorn action with a 6.5 gap SAUM or RSAUM, Remington Short Action Ultra Magnum, that I had just done up to do some comparisons and tests. You can go back to that video and see what I was talking about. But what I had to do today was bring to you the rifle. We've put it all together. We've coated our barrel, we've set it out, had to throw it down a little bit further to get the bullet position I wanted to. I've put it into this MDT, the LSS Gen-2 chassis. It's got our barrel guard adapter for our Bipod system, bag rider on it, but put it all on there. The notable feature about how it's set up is this scope that's on top here. Coincidentally, right as we're putting this process this project together, the guys over at Valdada IOR in America, which was Glenn and Val over there, Glenn contacted us and said, listen, we like your channel, we like what you do, we've got a new scope and we would like to get it to you to see what your thoughts are. It's designed for long range shooting and we'd like to get it to you so you can have a little shot and have a little use of it and tell us what your thoughts are on it. So I took that opportunity with open arms and not too long later this scope showed up for me. So where I'm going to test it on is on this rifle here, which is, I'm setting it up and I'll go through that process a little bit, but a very good place. This rifle, my plan is to take it out to probably around the 3,000 yards, which is okay, a long way for a 6.5, but I'm pretty sure we can get there in this combination. And this is, at least to start off with, where I want to do some playing with this scope. So the scope is the RECON G2, so the Gen 2 of the RECON scope in the Valdada scopes. This is and I suppose I'll go through the features of what I know about it in the research I've done previously and of the Gen 1, so just the normal RECON Valdada scope, and what I thought of that scope and what I can see of this one here, and the strategy of what I'm doing with setting it up and how I'm making it work. The scope is basically known for very nice features. The most notable one would be the 40mm tube. Now, the 40mm tube is, for those who know about scopes, gives you the ability to transfer more light and clearer picture. So essentially the scope is more capable as a magnifier and giving a better picture with the thickness of this center tube and the size of the lenses and bits and pieces that can go inside there. This scope here is the first one where they've used to the level to an extra advantage you get out of that, and the real advantage to this scope above a lot of scopes in that field is that it has 150 minutes of internal elevation. So an awesome feature and something that really attracted me to it. And I suppose I should compare there with the Gen 1 version of this and this scope here, the Gen 2. That's a feature. The Gen 1 I thought only had 100 minutes of elevation. I think it actually might have had 120 minutes of elevation, but really put it in the normal running field. Had very good power, super good glass, and a scope I looked at many times, but both the fact that it didn't have extra elevation was also, I think, just first focal plane, which this scope is as well, and I'll touch on that in a bit. But a feature that I didn't like when I started to push the boundaries, which is still very good, and I don't want to take it away from the general overview of the scope, but for me it was it's something that I wasn't comfortable going with, was it had a forward parallax adjustment. So its focus ring was on the front here. Now the reason I didn't like that for what I was doing was I wanted to be able to attach stuff to the front of it. So the lights of the Charlie Tarak straps to the front of the scope. That's the way I'm doing it. I'm not mounting to a rail, I'm mounting to the front of the scope, and to have a broken section where it had adjustment and things in between the main body or the clamps and something heavy hanging off the front, I don't know, but my thoughts were that was going to be a mistake. So it's something that balked me on it and stopped me going to that place. This has gone away. They've gone and taken the forward parallax, they've put it on the side where most scopes are. for me, I don't know if there's other mechanical advantages or logic that makes sense above the forward focus ring to make sense of it, but for me it comes back to a solid structure. This is now all solid steel, obviously a threaded section to go to the sunshade, but essentially that is bolts up in a solid section to be able to put the likes of the Charlie track on the front of it. So that's a real win for me. The 150 minutes of elevation, that's a real win for me. And then the next bit is, now this is a first focal plane scope. So those that know me, and I haven't changed my thoughts on that, I prefer second focal plane. I prefer a fine, constant reticle at all powers. I don't use a reticle for MOA or mil dot holdover. I don't do it that way. I like the feature of my reticle staying the same and being able to zoom in and out. That's just a little bit of habit, but there's other things I'm not going to go too deep into it, but I still like it there. One of the negatives that I've always found with first focal plane is that once you go into your higher power ranges, so it doesn't matter how that is, if you've got a 1 to 5 scope, then it's at 5, and if you've got a 1 to 60 scope, then it's at 50 and 60. But it's at the higher ranges on that scope is that the reticle then becomes too thick. These guys have definitely designed this around using it at the higher power. They have a super fine reticle. Very sharp, very clear, but very fine. So even on full power, and later on I'll get some images on that for you, but even at full power, this is still a fine reticle. Certainly works very nicely, and in a comparison, a scope reticle I'm very used to, I really like, and that would be the fine reticle in likes of a Night Force second focal plane scope. That MOAR T, which is the thin, that one there, this on full power is thinner than that reticle is. So very thin, very fine reticle, which means that up in your high powers it is going to be super clear and not in your road, not distracting from the other vision and not clouding and taking away impacts and things like that with a thick reticle bar. I think that probably pushes this scope into extreme long range or long range target, or long range I shouldn't say target, maybe long range hunting as well, but just long range when you come into hunting and you want a wider field of view, coming back to, and I should say this is a 4.8 to 30 power. Coming back to your lower stuff, that reticle is very small, very fine, but still distinguishable in a clean environment. In a hunting environment, with more crowding around, that sort of stuff, I think that would become too clear. It would become too fine. But it is designed as a long range scope, so very good, really suits where I'm going on that side of things. Other bits and pieces that I'd go with it, which I've found, which are things that are probably, there's both sides of the fence to go with it. The 40mm ring, the 40mm tube. Obviously, as I've said, gives more light through there, more light transmission. It's part of the sharp and clear and really wonderful image that the scope will produce, or does produce. Awesome, big tick. And the elevation, the internal elevation, exactly where I'd hope the world is going, and these guys are the first I know of that have gone there to that sort of level. So, hats off to them. There is a double edge to that, and right at the moment that double edge is that and this is rapidly changing, but getting rings to suit these scopes, not everyone does, and you haven't got all the options to go with it. So at the moment, one of the things I've found is that on this scope you'll notice that it's set up a little bit further forward. The scope is set up a fair way forward, right to the edge of my base, and there, I suppose I'll go into it. This scope is made with a great big square hunk in the middle as for the control box side of things. So made in a very sound, and I don't know the finer details of what's going on in there, but I do know from both the look of it, the behaviour of it, and the research I've done on it, is it's made like a tank. It's super strong, it's going to deal with a lot of stuff. What that means is it ends up with this large box, which means there's very little flexibility to move your scope backwards and forwards. Now, with longer rings, you'd have more flexibility and be able to make that. I prefer to use this style of ring, which is a joined ring box, so you have your MOA in it, but rather than having separate rings, it's actually joined together. I prefer to have that but a standard size, which this is, only just fits. No problems with that at all, except for the fact this box is pushed forward, which means the scope ends up being moved backwards a little bit from the center point of where your rings are, and then you end up where you have to put your rings all the way forward to not end up with a huge eye relief. My answer, depends what you've got. A lot of rifles nowadays have a very long rail down the bottom here, so moving a bit further forward is easy, it's no problems at all. This one doesn't have that choice. I'm going to do up a custom rail, and that's where I'll get into this, but I'm going to do up a custom rail, move that little bit further forward, closes down my length of pole a little bit, gets my balance back where I want it to do. So really no negatives attached to it except for what you can actually buy at the moment. And as I said, rapidly changing. And of course, that's a bit what you can expect. When you're at the front edge of things, you can sometimes have to wait a little bit for the likes of accessories and accessory manufacturers to catch up. So anyway, a minor detail, this scope really is a nice looking thing. It sets up there. I'm going to do, like I said, a custom base, or what I should touch on there is what I'm actually up to in this part here. This at the moment still is a 20-minute base on here. I have a new 30-minute scope rail on here coming, and I'm actually going to get a custom one machined up. I need a custom one that raises it up a little bit higher and also is a little forward extended, so I can move this scope forward another probably half an inch to get to where I want my relief, everything set up perfectly. But you can still, the 30-minute rail is designed to go with these rings, which are a very nice set of rings made by the American Rifle Company, which are quite clever. I haven't seen them before, quite clever the way they do it. But this is 45 minutes. So 45 minutes plus 30 minutes give me 75 minutes. So smack on half my elevation. I have to make sure that all works, but that should end up where I have 100 yards zero and 150 minutes of elevation. And with that 150 minutes of elevation, and how much holdover I have to use inside, I use the first focal plane, so I'm only using a limited amount, but I'm certain we're going to be able to shoot this round, which is the short fat one, which is the 6.5 the 6.5 gap Remington short action ultra magnum, and I'm planning on being able to get that out to, even at our altitude, which is 900 feet above sea level, getting it out to 3,000 yards, maybe even 3,000 meters. Ridiculously long way, but really I just need the holdover, and then I need to do my job as a shooter properly, and my little spotter needs to do her job to get me onto target. But that's how far I plan to go with just this setup, not using any adjustable Charlie track, anything else adjustable bases, a fixed base, and using the scope and limited amounts of holdover. So something that I think this is going to be able to do very, very well. Very sharp, very clean reticle. Really look forward to pushing it through its paces. That's for this rifle. So the next bit that I have to go through, and I'm really looking at my options and that sort of stuff, is probably going with a different set of rings and getting it to be able to run on other rails and things like that. So what I've done with a lot of my other rifles is more and more push them over to a 60-minute base, a 60-minute rail. So then I can run the likes of my Air Attack and a Night Force on there and be able to go from 0 to 100 yards right out to however many minutes of elevation I can get out of with the Air Attack and 120 minutes out of a Night Force scope. This one here, I think my plan is, and I've got to go through all the science on it, or the maths on it, whether I need a 15-minute set of rings, or I can get away with a 20-minute set of rings and be able to then clamp it down onto my 60-minute bases. We'll see. Hopefully I can get to that place, maybe trying to build a custom 15-minute set of rings, 15-minute set of rings, but a place where I can use it with some of the bigger calibers up there as well. I know the scope is rated, it has no issues for that. I know it's very clear, it's very precise, so I know there's no issues with that. The last thing I'll say is that this scope is in mil. I'm an MOA man, that's the way I think. I like the MOA. There is an MOA scope coming, and they said, listen, you can wait, it's early next year, they're coming. When they gave me the opportunity, I was pretty buzzing to try it, and really I had no problems using the mill side of things, but I really look forward to seeing what that reticle looks like as well, and the MOA side of things. For me, that would be a tiny bit of a positive as well, but like I said, mill still works really well. So I suppose the upshot of it would be, I think the rifles come together really nice. I'm really hoping there's clouds and rain disappears so I can get out and pull the trigger on these rounds. Really looking forward to how this rifle works, and really looking forward to getting down behind this scope. I've got to thank Glenn and Val over there for giving us the opportunity to have a look at this thing. I'm very impressed. It really is nice, and it is nice to see scope companies like that are taking the lead in the fashion of doing the bits and pieces to get those extras. Getting 150 minutes of elevation in an internal adjustment in a scope is a nice strong step forward, and it's really great that a company like that has picked up and run with the ball on that. Also, the level of going to the fine reticle, really specifically designing a scope around extreme long range shooting, or at least long range shooting. Nice to see that world as well. They've gone down the road of where you can no doubt use this for PRS, but really more designed for your extreme long range shooting, which is nice to see companies picked up and run with that as well. So thanks very much for them, Glenn, for doing the organising, Val for making it happen. Thank you very much for that. Really look forward to using it. I'm wrapped to the rifle, as you can see with our little rounds. I'll go through a little bit more than that when we've been out and shoot and had a bit of a shoot. At the moment I'm just running them with the 150 grain Sierra Match King. And we'll see, I've got to work out paddlers and things like that. I've done up a basic load. There's a tiny bit of fire forming to go yet to finish that load off. So I've got 50 done up to go through and bang through there, run the barrel in. I did mention also from the basic reamer, I ran the thing forward another 2.5 mil or 100 thou to get the bullet looking like it is. So I just got it forward into what I think is going to be the sweet spot. But really looking forward to pulling the trigger. I think it looks great. Really happy and proud to have a big scope like that sitting on top of it, and really look forward to this season coming up and the shooting we're going to do with it. So mate, give us drop down any comments you've got or questions you've got on that sort of stuff, and hope you enjoyed. I look forward to what we've got to bring for you. Thanks very much for checking us out, and we'll catch you next time. Watching the video, guys, I hope you enjoyed. Down below here we've got a link to our web store where we have some of the specialised long range shooting products that we actually produce. Check them out.
And for those of you who can, it'd be great to get some help. In our store we have support bits, and when you purchase those, the money goes direct to our channel and helps us bring these videos to you.
Thanks guys.
See you next time.